Through the Gates of Death.
Dion Fortune. Chapter 11. The Heaven World. We hear a great deal about the heaven world in spiritualistic communications, and many people are repulsed by the idea, for they feel that everything is represented as being so material. They read of Raymond smoking cigars and drinking champagne and feel that heaven falls short of their expectations. Or again, they read of a golden floor and perpetual harping and feel that this would not appeal to them either. A rather higher type of heaven is described by the spirits who tell us that the artist paints marvelous pictures upon illuminable canvas, or the scientist penetrates the secrets of nature by merely looking at them. Delightful as everything is made to sound, we feel instinctively that there is something wrong, for all this does not ring true. Moreover, we feel that we should be thoroughly bored, even if it were true, for there is no pleasure in age-long, effortless perfection. So much of our joy in achievement lies in the triumph of difficulties overcome. There can be no such joy in an effortless heaven. For many people, too, there could be no joy in a heaven that did not include their loved ones. Now, what are we to say to all these contradictory statements which do violence to our deepest instincts? They cannot be right, but nevertheless, are they all wrong? How are we to understand them? First of all, we must realize that heaven is a state of consciousness, not a place. Pure mind is independent of time and space, as we know by our dreams, whether the dream of sleep or the daydream. We can fantasy ourselves to be in ancient Egypt or far Cathay, and for all our purposes of consciousness, we are there for a moment. We see the sights, we hear the sounds of these times and places in proportion to the vividness of our imagination. When we are first dead, we are simply disembodied minds and obey the laws of dream consciousness. Purgatory is our dream of remorse and purification, and heaven world is our wish fulfillment. Freud tells the story of a little boy whose ration of cherries was limited by a careful mother, and who on awakening the next morning announced, "Herman has eaten all the cherries." His dream had fulfilled the ungratified wish of the previous day. So in the sleep of death, the dreams that come to us during our heaven world phase are wish fulfillments. But they are something more than the idle gratification of fancy. They arise from the deep brooding of the mind upon its hopes and ideals. They may not seem to us very lofty, but they represent the phase of experience through which that particular soul is going through in its evolution, and it may be necessary for that soul to go through the realization of its hopes in order to profit by the lesson. The Mohammedan heaven, with its horus, may not appeal to the Westerner, but it has been potent to send thousands of fanatical devotees to a sacrificial death in order that their faith might be spread among the infidels, and that faith has been a great force for good among the tribes so primitive that they could not respond to a more sophisticated appeal. We must not judge another man's heaven by our own standards. His heaven is wish fulfillment, not ours. We must face the fact that the cat burglar's heaven would be full of easily climbed porches. When we call back the spirits of the departed world to tell us of their experience in the heaven world, whether they have gone, we are listening to the account of their dream in the sleep of death. It is only when we are fortunate enough to get hold of one of the souls that are freed from the wheel of birth and death, and are continuing their beneficent work for humanity upon the inner planes instead of entering into their rest. In other words, it is only when we get in touch with the Master that we shall hear an account of the heaven world that shall give us a real understanding of its nature and the realization of its parts to the whole. The account which is given by a person recently passed over is comparable to the account that is given of the working of a great hospital by one of the patients in its beds. He sees only a very small portion of the whole and has no means of assessing its significance. The account which is given by the guides, ministering spirit friends, and others whose task is to assist the departed is equivalent to that which we might receive from the probationer nurses of the same hospital. It is not until we hear the doctors lecturing the students that we begin to grasp significance and scope of the great institution that we are investigating. Purgatory is a hospital for sick souls where they are operated upon. The heaven world is first a convalescent home and then a school. For a few, it may also be a college. In the lower fields of heaven, so often described in communications from the inner planes, souls rest and recuperate, dreaming pleasant dreams, meanwhile that soothe them and make them happy. This phase, having fulfilled its purpose, passes off and gives place to the next. In order to understand the significance of these inter-incarnation phases, we must enter somewhat deeply into the philosophy of the subject. As we have already noted, heaven and equally hell are states of consciousness, not places. But if we realize the actual facts of the matter, we shall find that Earth is also a state of consciousness. Modern physics is showing conclusively that matter is simply a form of force, which, owing to the fact that it is in equilibrium, appears to us to be static. There is no such thing as dense matter as popularly understood. When you bark your shins over the coal scuttle, you are really falling over electrical resistances. Incarnation is a state of consciousness which perceives these forms of force. Disincarnation, or death, is the state of consciousness which no longer perceives them but has become subjective and only aware of the content of its own consciousness. In death, the gates of the senses are closed. Otherwise, the man is unchanged. In fact, we might say that viewed from the standpoint of the soul, death is simply the closing of the gates of the senses. If a man's consciousness is entirely limited to the 5 physical senses, though such men are rare, be it as much shut in with his own thoughts and as inaccessible as a sleeper lying oblivious upon a bed. But does this sleep of death yield nothing but pleasant dreams and rest? No, it does much more than this. Anyone who is familiar with the practice of mental work and meditation know how powerful is the concentrated brooding of the mind upon some spiritual ideal. The highlands of heaven are mounts of meditation. The soul, withdrawn from sense impressions, is building thought forms and giving itself autosuggestion. These processes play an important part in the formulating the vehicles of embodiment when the time comes for it to reincarnate. The artist who dreams his dream of cosmic canvases is building faculty. On earth, the realization of his vision was limited by the skill of hand and eye. In the heaven world, he is under no such limitations and bodies forth his vision as he sees it. This trains faculty, and when he reincarnates, he will have gone some way towards building himself a physical vehicle in which hand and eye will cooperate with the inner vision and give it form. Life after life of effort, together with the intervening periods of meditation on the inner planes, gradually make the soul that which it wishes to be. If its wishes are unworthy or untrue, The regularly recurring spells of purgatory neutralize its efforts. Like Penelope's web, that which was woven by day is unpicked by night. Those things which in our earth life we have realized but failed to attain are achieved in heaven. The subjective achievement builds faculty, and we return to incarnation with the power to achieve latent in us. Life has done its work for us when it brings realization. Even if we are unable to achieve our realization, for in the next life these will be within our grasp.